For those that haven't seen the presentation before, I've been working, as Darryl said, for about 10 years on mathematical models that model what happens in the stock exchange, particularly the price, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. What I'm doing now is I'm going to give you an update, on what I covered last month. Is it quicker to go through, or do I just say next to you? Okay, all right. We'll start off, if you do the next slide, we'll start off with where we were at the end of last month. So this is as it was a month ago. And what I've got here is, in June, there was a market top signal, which has happened 20 times in the last 130 years, so it's pretty reliable. And although there's 20 times, there was a significant drop in the market. So I'm hoping this 21st time is also going to be accurate and give us a drop in the market. Not that I want a drop in the market, but I hope that it's accurate. The red boxes at the top are windows that are calculated as opportunities for the market to top out. So we have, here we go next. There's a 2-week window we've passed already in July. There was a probability that could have been a top. In the end, it wasn't. If we move forward to the next slide, there's a window we're in right now, which is a 7-week window through until mid-November. If we move forward again, there's a 4-week window at the end of the year. That's the last 2 weeks of the year, and then the first 2 weeks of January. And if we move forward again, there's another very, very large window, spring and summer next year. We can move forward one more slide. And then we know that the Fed ends its QE3 at the end of October. That's what they've been hinting at. And we know that when QE1 ended and QE2 ended, we had very large drops in the market. So potentially we'll have a large drop. Maybe with the tapering over the last year, they've got around that problem. Potentially the market's very high at the moment, and we might see a drop again. What I wanted to do, having presented this last month, I wanted to look at how accurate these windows are calculated and which one is likely to be the top. So the work I've done in the last month is to work out some probability of how accurate they are. If we move on to the next slide, looking at the 2000 top, move forward to the next slide. There was a signal, very, very similar signal to what we've got now, in December, which said a top nearby. This is actually very close. Usually it's a few months before. This is only weeks before the top. If you move forward again, from that signal I could calculate 3 windows of opportunity. If we move forward again, and as we know, the top was just in early January 2000. So it came in the first window, calculated from the top signal. And if we move forward again, you see that circle encapsulates a very big drop in the market just before the top happened. From August to October, the market dropped 1,400 points. It's a huge drop. And that's quite similar to what we're seeing at the moment. The market's dropped a long way from the September high down to what looks like a double bottom, which just happened since Thursday last week and today. And it looks like the market now might climb back up again. So the drop we're seeing right now is very, very reminiscent of that last drop before the high in 2000. Let's now look at 2007. If we move forward, this now is 2007, but the year before, 2007 top, and then 2008. If we move forward, the top signal happened in May that year, it's a few months before. So the top was in October, the signal that happened in May, telling me that a top was nearby. If we move forward, from that top signal I could calculate 3 windows of opportunity. And if we move forward one more, we'll see that this time the top happened in the second window, in October, very early October 2007. If we move forward again, and again we had this situation where we had a severe drop just before the final rally up to the top. And again, this time the market dropped 1,500 points, and that was from the July high to the August low. So I continued this analysis back of the 20 times we've had a signal in the last 130 years, and about 95% of the time the top appears in the window. So there's a pretty high accuracy in terms of whether these windows will show the top in the market. And of the few percent that it didn't show the top, they actually occurred between the windows. So the top would happen between one window and the next. So again, that 5 or 10% that doesn't become the window actually comes in the gap between windows, so it's still pretty accurate. So it's about a 90 to 95% accuracy rate that these windows are correct. let's move forward. So let's move forward to the present day. This is the stock market as of just a couple of days ago. As you can see the decline from late September into early October. Again, we got the signal. We got the Fed ending QE3 in October. If we move forward, you can see we can discount the July window, we're past that. We're now in the second window. And if we move forward, I looked at these two windows and I tried to see if there's a slight probability about which one might be the window. So I've been working the last few weeks on a way of looking at that. I came up with a scoring mechanism. If we move forward, the first window got a score of 70, and the second window got a score of 76. If we move forward. Okay, and that's looking at price rhythm within the market that are all projecting up to a final top. And by looking at those different rhythms and coming up with a score, the end of year window has a slightly higher probability. So if we move forward one slide, so say slightly higher probability, not much. So it still could be the October window we're in now, or it could be year end. The problem is, if the Fed ends QE3 in October, it's liable the market may drop. So it wouldn't then allow for a high at year end. But one of the surprises we might get at the next FOMC meeting in the last final weeks of October is they might extend the purchase of bonds through to year end. So if we move to the next slide, what we might see is they might shift it as a surprise to try and get the market just to go a little bit further to year end. I don't think the Fed wants the market to plummet 2 months before year end. So that's a surprise we might see from the Fed. If we move forward, market top signals. So one thing I talked about last month was the kind of signals you get that happen just within days of the market top. So if we move forward, there are about 16 signals that I monitor over a period of time. If we move forward one more slide, most of them are no, so I don't think we're near the top yet, but we're close. We've got a yes signal, if you move forward one slide, and that's the signal we got in June, telling us we're close to a top. And we've got the windows, if you move forward one more slide, across other windows, we've got the 3 red windows telling us that we've got probabilities that the top's going to happen. So they're defined, but we're not within those windows yet with a new high. So at the moment, we've got, I haven't got enough yes signals for the market top. If we move forward one more slide, those 4 signals there, 8, 9 and 10 are mutually exclusive. You'll have a yes for one of them, and we have a yes for 9, but you won't get a yes for all of them. So you're unlikely to get a yes for everything, but within that box you get a yes for 9, I'm hoping to get a yes for 11, and then yeses for the others. So I'm looking for a score of about 8 or 10 after the 16, and that will give us a high percentage of probability that we've got a top, and I'm hoping we'll get that sometime in the next few months as we get to year end. If we move forward, the other thing I've got to measure on here is something I've come up with, and that is upward momentum. It doesn't look at volume, it doesn't look at price, it just looks about upward and downward movement on the stock market on a monthly basis. So if we move forward, the scores throughout history are shown in the middle column. So the key dates when high points in the market happened are on the left. The score is in the middle, and then some comments on what was going on at the time is on the right. So we move forward. So right now, we're in the 3rd highest in history in terms of the upward momentum in the market. And there's only 2 other times in history, 1937 after the Great Depression, and 1997 after the Asian currency crisis, we were higher. So we move forward a little bit. In recent history, 1997, 2007, score of 80, and then 1991 around 94, the 90s boom, they also scored quite highly on this. If we move forward one more time, back in the Great Depression, 1930, 1929, that scored quite high, and then 1987, the Great Crash, 1987, that also scored on this list. If we move forward again, that's 1937, that's post the Great Depression, so 5 years after the Great Depression, there's another significant drop in the market. That, again, was way up on the scores. And if we move forward again, post-World War II boom, so lots of tops in the post-war boom from 51 to 1966. If we move forward again, post-First World War and Second World War booms, 1919, 1946, also had high scores. If we move forward one more. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about now is the outbreak of Ebola in West Africa. There are lots of things that are going on in the world that could cause problems for the world economy. Ukraine, Middle East, softening in Europe, even QE3 ending here in the United States. But one thing that governments can't negotiate with is the virus. And the outbreak in West Africa is starting to grow in terms of number of cases at quite an alarming rate. And the question is, will this end up becoming a huge pandemic, the likes of which we've seen in history, and they happen every 100 years or so, and it could have a huge effect on global GDP and the lives of people on planet Earth. So if we move forward, we know that the outbreak has started in West Africa, and including these countries, we also we know there's some cases in Nigeria. We now have at least one case in the United States and also in Spain as well. If we move forward, the growth in cases and the deaths is now exponential. It's growing at a huge rate. The number of deaths is around about 50%, which is a very high death rate. Even something as bad as the Black Death swept across Europe was only 30%, sometimes closer to 50%. But we're seeing similar death rates now in this particular disease as we have in influenza and in the Black Death back in the Middle Ages. And so over the last 1,000, 2,000 years, there have been situations in history where many, many millions of people have died when a particular disease has come along and killed many, many people as the virus has spread. Influenza particularly, the Black Death, cholera. I wanted to understand what this growth rate was, so if we go to the next slide, I took some data down, starting in September, going back, the number of cases of the disease, and then the half-life of those cases going back in time to March, and then on the right-hand side, the number of days between each data set. If you go forward one slide, the first three sets of data is not really much of a trend. There's an average of 24, but very high standard deviation, so there's no real trend there. But if we move forward, the next 4 sets of data, the trend is now coming around that monthly, so every month the number of cases is doubling. The average is 28 days, just under a month, standard deviation quite small now. So we're starting to see a doubling effect. And that exponential growth is very concerning, because the number of people who get the disease, it spreads further to more people. As the number of people grows, then the hospitals can't deal with the situation. And also, there's a possibility that the disease might mutate, because as the number of people get the disease, the bigger chance that disease might mutate also increases. So moving forward one more slide, just a mathematical exercise. Here we are at 6,400. If we move forward, by the end of the year, the 50,000 at this growth rate, which is why the governments need to act very, very quickly. The developed nations are probably going to deal with this situation quite well, but the poorer nations are going to suffer if they cannot get this under control. It will spread, and it could then be a huge problem on human life and then on the world growth. If you take this forward, just a mathematical exercise, by the mid-next year, 3 million people, and if you go forward again, by the end of next year, 200 million people, and then May the year after, it would actually have covered everyone on the planet Earth. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but the growth rate, the exponential growth rate, is really, really strong. And it's going to, unless it's checked very soon, that growth rate means it'll get out of control, and then the number of people affected by this will just grow and grow and grow. So that's the concern that I have at the moment, despite all of the other geopolitical risks that are around. If you go to the next slide, that's the end. Thank you very much. I had a newsletter if anyone would like to come up and like to be added to that. But if you have any questions, I'll answer any questions you may ask.
Just a question about your scoring model. The score has to do with the probability of a top or the intensity of the drop?
That's the score up to 97?
Yes.
Yeah, that's purely just looking at the charts, the movement up and down the price. It doesn't look at volume, it doesn't look at price change. It looks at just up or down movement. It's very, very simple. It looks at short-term, medium-term and long-term. And it takes a sort of consolidated view, okay, and then just generates a score. And from that you can start to then grade all of the tops for the last 100 years and where they fit. So we fit right at the top in terms of how extended we are.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
You only have Dow there. What about the S&P and Russell? They would also have the same.
The S&P runs very similar to the Dow Jones. The Russell, slightly different at the moment. and the tech sector and the Nasdaq, that's also a little different, but it tends to follow the Dow and the S&P. I follow Dow Jones because it's got the longest history of data. It goes back about 130 years of daily data, and therefore I can back test all the algorithms I have over that history. The S&P and the Nasdaq don't have that history. I still look at them. I run the same algorithms on them, and I actually incorporate the output from S&P, Russell, and Nasdaq into some of these models. So the red windows that give you a probability, those red windows are calculated using output not just from the Dow, but also from the S&P, the Russell, and the Nasdaq. So I do incorporate the information, but I tend to focus mostly on the Dow because of that history of data. I can backtest everything back 130 years. Any other final questions? Okay. Thanks very much.